Linda Marie Pagano, once known as Strongsville Jane Doe, was a tragic figure in American history, hailing from Akron, Ohio. For an agonizing 44 years, she remained an unidentified victim of murder. On September 1st, 1974, following a dispute with her stepfather, Pagano departed from his apartment, vanishing without a trace. The following February, the skeletal remains of a white female were discovered by 3 young boys in a park in Strongsville, Ohio. Unfortunately, these remains were buried in an unmarked grave after failing to be identified, largely due to a clerical oversight that prevented them from being entered into the databases of missing persons, leading to the case fading into obscurity. In a remarkable turn of events in 2016, a college student engaged in genealogical research stumbled upon the long-forgotten case. Her online posts reignited interest, capturing the attention of Carl Koppelman, a forensic sketch artist. This renewed focus prompted the Akron police to revisit the case, and by June 2018, the remains were definitively identified as belonging to Linda Pagano. At the time of her disappearance, she was a dedicated student at Springfield High in Akron, the youngest of 3 siblings, with an older brother, Michael, and an elder sister, Cheryl. Linda was characterized by her honesty, diligence, and shyness. She held a part-time job serving food at the A&W in Tallmadge and had a passion for rock music. During the summer of 1974, she and her siblings resided with their stepfather, Byron Claflin, in his apartment on Carnegie Avenue. Claflin, a bartender known for his frequent drinking and unpredictable temper, was not reported to have a contentious relationship with Linda. On August 31, 1974, she attended a Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young concert in Cleveland with her boyfriend, Steve Wilson. They returned to Akron in the early hours of September 1st, after which Pagano dropped Wilson off at his home before heading back to her stepfather's residence. Byron Claflin, the stepfather, stood as the sole witness to the events preceding Pagano's mysterious disappearance. Claflin recounted that Pagano's late-night returns sparked a heated argument between them, culminating in Claflin expelling Pagano from their residence. According to Claflin, Pagano exited the apartment and never returned, marking the last sighting of her alive. In the days following Pagano's vanishing, family members presumed that Linda was simply staying with friends. Claflin reached out to Michael Pagano's mother to inquire about Linda's whereabouts. However, a day after her last known sighting, family members officially reported Linda Pagano missing. At that time, her case attracted minimal attention, with law enforcement operating under the assumption that she had chosen to run away, and the media largely overlooked the situation. Yet those who knew Pagano found it hard to believe she would leave without a word, especially since her Ford Mustang remained behind. On February 5, 1975, 3 boys exploring a park in Strongsville, Ohio, stumbled upon partial skeletal remains along the banks of the Rocky River, now recognized as Millstream Run Reservation. The remains were significantly weathered, missing a jawbone, and no physical evidence was recovered from the site. It was established that the remains belonged to a white female, with initial estimates suggesting she was around 20 years old. The cause of death was determined to be a gunshot wound to the head, prompting the investigation to be classified as a homicide. Early efforts were made to connect the remains to the then-missing heiress Patty Hearst, who had vanished from California in 1974. Upon learning of the unidentified body through a television broadcast, Michael Pagano contacted the Strongsville police, proposing that it could be Linda. However, his theory was dismissed, as authorities believed the victim was too old and likely taller than Linda. The remains, which had remained unidentified for some time, were ultimately laid to rest in an unmarked grave at a potter's field located in Memorial Gardens, Highland Hills. In 2016, Christina Skates, a student at Cleveland State University, was conducting genealogy research on her family when she stumbled upon the unidentified skeleton in the cemetery records. The information available regarding the skeleton was limited. Skates, puzzled by the apparent neglect of this young woman's case, sought access to police files and autopsy records. She subsequently shared her findings on Reddit, which attracted the interest of volunteer forensic artist Carl Koppelman. Koppelman produced a reconstruction of the victim based on photographs of the skull that Skates had obtained through her research. However, this initial reconstruction did not gain much attention. When Cuyahoga County law enforcement contacted Koppelman about a different matter, he inquired about the unidentified bones. Skates also reached out to law enforcement, expressing her concerns that the bones were not listed among Cuyahoga County's unidentified remains. New photographs of the skull were provided to Koppelman, and it was revealed that a typographical error in the case files had hindered the bones from being included in missing and unidentified databases. Following Skates' communication with Cuyahoga County law enforcement, the bones were added to NAMUS, the National Database for Missing and Unidentified Persons. Once the case was included in NAMUS, a potential match was swiftly identified. This theory was initially proposed by an internet investigator on a subreddit dedicated to mysteries. Akron police subsequently contacted Cuyahoga County authorities regarding the possibility that the unidentified body belonged to Linda Pagano. Preliminary comparisons of dental records were exchanged, and discussions about exhuming the body for DNA analysis soon took place among Strongsville law enforcement, city officials, and medical examiners. After extensive discussions spanning several months, the exhumation took place in October 2017. The presence of numerous unmarked graves in the potter's field where the victim was interred necessitated multiple attempts to locate the correct body. The University of Akron lent its expertise, employing magnetic surveying techniques to accurately map the unmarked graves. Upon successfully exhuming the right remains, bone samples were collected from the victim, alongside DNA mouth swabs from Cheryl and Michael Pagano. By late 2017, these samples were dispatched to the University of North Texas for mitochondrial DNA analysis. On June 29, 2018, the unidentified remains were definitively confirmed to be those of Linda Pagano, 44 years after her mysterious disappearance. In the wake of Linda's identification, Michael Pagano had the opportunity to meet with Skates personally to convey his heartfelt appreciation. Linda's remains were returned to her family, allowing them to arrange a dignified burial. A memorial service honoring Linda was conducted in January 2019. The recovered portions of her skeleton were cremated and laid to rest beside her late mother at Holy Cross Cemetery. The investigation into Pagano's murder remains an active case, with renewed focus directed towards identifying her killer. Given that Pagano's remains were discovered on Metro Parks land, the Cleveland Metro Parks police have taken charge of the investigation. Michael Pagano has noted that updates from law enforcement regarding the case have been infrequent since the identification conference. As of 2022, authorities have identified two persons of interest: Linda's stepfather, Byron Claflin, and her boyfriend, Steve Wilson. Claflin, a significant witness and potential suspect, passed away in 1990. While no suspects have been officially named, several of Pagano's loved ones harbor suspicions regarding Claflin's involvement in her demise. With Pagano's disappearance now classified as a homicide, law enforcement plans to re-interview family members and potential witnesses to gather further insights. Authorities are keenly focused on finding Steve Wilson. While he is not deemed a suspect, his role as a crucial witness is undeniable, as he was among the last individuals to have seen Pagano alive. Evelyn Colin, once known as Beth Doe, was an unidentified American teenager from New Jersey whose tragic fate captured national attention. On December 20th, 1976, her dismembered remains, along with those of her unborn daughter, were discovered in 3 suitcases in Whitehaven, Pennsylvania. The heinous nature of the crime, compounded by the fact that she was pregnant at the time of her murder, drew widespread media coverage. Evelyn, who was carrying a 9-month-old female fetus, had suffered sexual assault, strangulation, and a gunshot wound to the neck, inflicted by an unknown assailant. Disturbingly, the gunshot was delivered post-mortem. Her remains had been meticulously dismembered with a serrated blade, and certain body parts, including her nose, breasts, and ears, were never recovered. The dismemberment was noted to be methodical, lacking the precision of a surgeon yet far from random. The remains of Evelyn and her child were placed in 3 suitcases, 2 adorned with stripes of red, blue, and white, and 1 featuring a tan plaid design. All were made of vinyl and matched in size. It appeared that the suitcases had been spray-painted black, and their handles had been deliberately removed. In a calculated effort to conceal the evidence, the suitcases were discarded from a vehicle traveling westward over a bridge spanning the Lehigh River along Interstate 80. The perpetrator likely aimed for the suitcases to land in the water below, minimizing the likelihood of discovery. However, 2 of the suitcases ended up in the woods, approximately 20 feet from the river, while the third, containing the head and fetus, was found on the riverbank. After a fall of about 300 feet, 2 of the suitcases burst open, revealing the gruesome contents within. The head, fetus, and 2 halves of the torso were exposed, a haunting testament to the brutality of the crime. Evidence gathered included straw and packaging foam, alongside a waterlogged bedspread adorned with fragments of a newspaper that had been utilized to wrap portions of the body. This newspaper was later identified as the New York Sunday from September 26, 1976, and was traced back to northern New Jersey. The bedspread, a striking reddish-orange hue embellished with yellow and pink embroidered flowers, was crafted from luxurious chenille fabric. Authorities transported the body in plastic bags to the nearby Gnaden-Houghton Hospital for examination. Following a meticulous 3-hour autopsy on December 23, 1976, it was concluded that the deceased was a white woman in her late teens or early 20s, though her identity remained elusive. The cause of death was established as strangulation, with evidence of a gunshot wound to the neck as well. Known as Beth Doe, she stood between 4 feet 11 inches and 5 feet 4 inches tall, weighing between 140 and 145 pounds, 150 pounds due to her pregnancy. Her shoulder-length hair was a natural dark brown, and the medical examiner classified her blood type as O. Distinctive markings were present on her body, including a 2 to 6 inch scar above one heel. Additionally, 2 moles on her face, one above her left eye and another on her left cheek, may have developed during her pregnancy. Before her teenage years, some of her molars had been extracted, and she had received dental fillings, though no dentures were present. Despite evidence of previous dental care, she had likely not visited a dentist in some time, as she exhibited severe tooth decay. Notably, one of her front incisors displayed a visible fracture, likely causing significant discomfort. It was surmised that she was born in Europe and relocated to the United States before her teenage years, as indicated by an examination of her tooth enamel. An initial anthropological assessment suggested her origins may lie in Serbia or Croatia. Isotope analysis was performed on her hair, teeth, and skeletal remains. It was determined that she had spent between 5 to 10 years in the United States, most likely in Tennessee or a neighboring state. Investigations into the unborn child revealed that gestation occurred while the victim was located in the southeastern region of the country. Following the discovery of the body, the victim's fingerprints were taken, and her dental records were meticulously charted. At that time, missing person reports from both the United States and Canada were reviewed, but none matched the victim. The medical examiner observed a series of numbers inscribed on the victim's body. The ink, presumed to be from a pen, was found on her left palm, suggesting she was right-handed if she had penned it herself. The inscription included the letters WSR along with the numbers 4 or 5, followed by either 4 or 7. Her fingerprints were submitted to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, yet they did not correspond with any entries in national databases. As she remained unidentified, an artist's sketch was created, and the public was solicited for assistance, yielding only a few promising leads. Information regarding the case was disseminated nationwide to encourage further tips. After several years without identification, the body was interred in 1983. In 2007, her remains were exhumed to gather additional forensic evidence and to facilitate a new facial reconstruction. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children produced 2 reconstructions, the most recent being released in May 2015. Investigators maintained a hopeful outlook regarding the identification of the remains and the resolution of her murder. In September 2019, the Pennsylvania State Police revealed a potential link between Beth Doe and Madeleine "Maggie" Cruz. A tip was provided by an individual who had attended school with Cruz and noted a striking resemblance to the reconstructions of Beth Doe. Cruz had spent time in the Massachusetts cities of Lenox and Framingham, where she lived with a foster family. In approximately 1974, at the age of around 16, she fled to Tarrytown with her foster sister, who returned after a week. By the summer of 1976, she reached out to a friend for financial assistance, claiming to be pregnant. After that, she seemingly vanished until media outlets began to explore a possible connection to Beth Doe. Later that month, authorities confirmed that Cruz was alive and well, thus ruling her out as a potential match. Investigators eventually traced familial DNA to Luis Colon Jr., the nephew of Evelyn Colon, whose identity was disclosed on March 31, 2021. At the time of her alleged murder by then 19-year-old Luis Sierra, she was just 15. Sierra was charged with her murder. At the time of his arrest, he was living in Ozone Park, New York, and was 63 years old. He was extradited to Pennsylvania and made his initial court appearance on April 28th. Evelyn Colon, of Puerto Rican descent, was in a relationship with Sierra, the father of her unborn child, while residing in Jersey City. Due to her pregnancy, her parents had recently permitted her to move into an apartment with Sierra, who had previously lived next door to the Colons. One day, Colon called her mother, expressing that she was unwell and requesting soup. However, when her mother arrived, no one was home. Neighbors informed Colon's family that she and Sierra had relocated. In January 1977, the family received a letter in Spanish from Sierra, postmarked from Connecticut, stating that Colon had given birth to a son and assuring them that she would reach out if she needed anything. Initially, Colon's family did not report her missing. As her brother, Luis Colon, mentioned, they believed she was safe with Sierra. After several years without contact, they attempted to report her disappearance, but the police declined to file a report due to the letter. By the time Colon was identified, both of her parents had passed away. Colon's distant relatives were discovered residing in Puerto Rico, prompting her family in the mainland United States to initiate a GoFundMe campaign aimed at facilitating their visit to her final resting place. On April 27, 1964, a mere day after his birth, the infant Paul Joseph Fronczak was abducted from Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago, Illinois. A woman masquerading as a nurse entered the hospital room of Dora Fronczak, claiming that the doctor required an examination of the newborn. Trusting the stranger, Dora handed over her precious child, who was then whisked away, never to return. Baby Paul had entered the world just a day prior, on April 26, 1964, at the same hospital. The investigation that ensued became the most extensive manhunt in Chicago's history at that time, enlisting the efforts of 175,000 postal workers, 200 police officers, and the FBI. By midnight of that fateful day, 600 homes had been searched, yet no sign of baby Paul could be found. On July 2, 1965, a young boy with a black eye, later identified as Jack Rosenthal, was discovered abandoned in a stroller at a bustling shopping center in Newark, New Jersey. Authorities anticipated a swift resolution to the case, but no one came forward to claim the child. Subsequently, he was placed into foster care and given the name Scott McKinley. The FBI later contacted the Fronczaks, suggesting that Scott McKinley might indeed be their long-lost son, as he was the only child they could not definitively rule out as baby Paul. The Fronczaks journeyed to New Jersey and confirmed their belief that McKinley was their son. He was eventually adopted and raised as Paul Joseph Fronczak. Today, it is widely accepted that Jack Rosenthal was abandoned by his parents, Gilbert and Marie Rosenthal. When Paul Fronczak turned 10, he ventured into the crawl space of his home in search of Christmas gifts, only to stumble upon newspaper articles detailing the harrowing kidnapping of baby Paul. He delivered the newspapers to his mother, who reprimanded him, stating, "Yes, you were kidnapped. We found you. We love you, and that is all you need to know." Fronczak mentioned that from that moment on, he often questioned whether he was truly the biological child of his parents. For nearly 4 decades, he refrained from discussing this topic with them. In 2012, Fronczak decided to undergo an Identigen DNA test. He approached his parents about it, and although they were taken aback, they consented and arranged to meet him in Chicago to provide DNA samples together. After their meeting, Paul returned to Las Vegas, but his parents later changed their minds and informed him over the phone that they did not want him to submit the DNA kit. After much deliberation, Fronczak resolved to send in the samples regardless. Subsequently, he received a call from Identigen, where he was informed that there was no remote possibility that he was their biological child. This revelation prompted Fronczak to seek out his true identity and uncover the fate of baby Paul. In 2013, a group of volunteer genealogists known as the DNA Detectives offered to assist him at no cost. On June 3, 2015, they revealed to Fronczak that he had been identified as Jack Rosenthal from Atlantic City, New Jersey, who had seemingly disappeared in 1965. They also informed him of a twin sister named Jill, who had gone missing. Fronczak later met biological relatives, some of whom recounted having seen him and Jill as children before they suddenly vanished, noting that their biological parents, Gilbert and Marie Rosenthal, would make excuses for their absence at family gatherings. Family members also recalled instances of Jack and Jill being severely abused and neglected, with one relative stating they had seen the twins confined in a cage. Gilbert was characterized as an angry man who returned from the Korean War suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, while Marie was described as a heavy drinker. Susan Wohlert, who previously cared for the Rosenthal family's older children, later recounted to Fronczak that during her babysitting duties, Gilbert and Marie Rosenthal had instructed her to not worry about the twins upstairs. Driven by curiosity, she went upstairs and discovered Jack and Jill alone in a room that contained only their cribs. Wohlert observed that Jack had a black eye, both children appeared unkempt, and the room had a strong odor of urine due to unwashed sheets. She stayed with Jack and Jill throughout the night, and the following morning Gilbert and Marie were extremely upset to find her in their children's room. Follert noted that she sensed Gilbert and Marie had been drinking as they emitted the smell of alcohol. Both Gilbert and Marie passed away from cancer in the 1990s. Fronczak expressed his belief that Jill may have met with foul play or experienced a tragic event, leading his parents to abandon him, as they could not account for just one twin. Nevertheless, he holds out hope that Jill might still be alive, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has produced a composite image depicting what she could look like today. No childhood photographs of Jill are known to exist, and the investigation into her disappearance remains active. In 2019, a Michigan man named Kevin Ray Body was identified as Paul Fronczak, who had been abducted from a Chicago hospital in 1964. His identity was not disclosed to the public until 2020, shortly after Body succumbed to cancer on his 56th birthday. Before his passing, he had several phone conversations with his biological mother, Dora Fronczak, but they never had the opportunity to meet face-to-face. Beatty was raised by Lorraine Fountain, who had been in a relationship with a Chicago doctor before abruptly relocating to Arkansas for a year and returning with baby Paul, who grew up as Kevin Beatty. Lorraine Fountain passed away in 2004, and the origins of Kevin's last name, Beatty, remain unclear.